Hi, how you doing? I'm glad that you're here. Look, we're going to talk about all of these pieces of memorabilia from movies that have been selling for preposterous amounts of money. But I learned in this conversation that the ruby slippers from the original Wizard of Oz movie sold for $32 million. And I don't even know how I feel about that. I'm maybe distressed about it, but I want you to hear this conversation because it keeps happening more and more. And I'll tell you this, if I could own a piece of memorabilia, I don't know how much I would spend on it, but someone get me the glove, like the glove, Thanos glove, you know, from the Avengers movies. I think I could spare a few dollars for that, but I don't know about $32 million. Anyway, here's the conversation. Hope you enjoy it. Chen is with Artnet News. She recently wrote about how memorabilia has become really big business. Chen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yes, of course. Listen, let's start with the Jim Henson Company. They're celebrating the 70th anniversary this year, and for the first time ever, they auctioned 400 items from the archives. That includes props and puppets from Fraggle Rock and the Dark Crystal. But this keeps happening, right? This keeps happening more and more. Timeless pop culture treasures that are up for sale. How big a deal is this auction of its archives?
Well, it's huge because, like you said, it's the first time that the Jim Henson Company is selling objects from its archives, and which is not to say that props from Jim Henson's company haven't hit the market before.
Yeah.
But this is official sale, sanctioned, authorized by the studio.
I kept on scrolling through the website of all the items up for auction, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe my eyes in terms of like how much people were willing to pay, but also just the things that were available. The most expensive item that sold at the auction was a Crystal of Truth prop from the Dark Crystal. It went for $89,600, which was 3 times more than expected. It's a prop from the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, a TV show. The series was a prequel to the Dark Crystal movie. How surprised were you about that amount? Almost $90,000 for this prop.
For sure. I was very surprised. I will say I've never watched this series, so
neither have I.
I am not caught up with the lore. I'm sure that it's a very big thing, but I think it's safe to say now that it's a very expensive prop crystal. Well, what immediately jumps out is, like you said, the triple its estimate of $30,000, meaning it really surpassed expectations. And it also outperformed the auction's tentpole piece. So the tentpole piece is, what anchors and leads the auction, and it's the sale highlight, which is reflected in its estimate. And in this case, it was a puppet from Fraggle Rock,
right.
Uncle Traveling Matt, which
that was supposed to be the centerpiece of this whole auction.
Pretty much, yeah. So it is sold well as expected, but not as much as the Crystal of Truth. And that really, it really illustrated for me something that Catherine Williamson, the auction house's managing director, told me ahead of the sale. She said, you can decide what your temple piece is, but when the sale happens, all bets are off, and it's the community. It's a community that tells you what its favorite pieces are. So.
Chen, I have a hard time with all of this. I really do. Not just because of Fraggle Rock. Fraggle Rock is a beloved piece of our, pop culture.
Sure.
And I'm sure this crystal is lovely. But there's something to be said about the proliferation of these stories, right? So like earlier this year, the last surviving Rosebud sled from Citizen Kane sold for $14.75 million. I like the sigh because I also sighed the same way when I heard that amount. And what struck with me about this is this is a sled that sort of ended up in someone's hand, like the way that ended up in someone's hands in the first place. Because back then studios were never like, oh, we should preserve this. This is a piece of golden memorabilia. Can you just talk a little bit about how this thing goes from discarded to $14.75 million?
Yeah, so the sled is one of like 3 surviving sleds from Citizen Kane that were made for the film. And the someone who collected it was actually Joe Dante, who's best known as the director of Gremlins. He picked up the sled from an old studio lot that was owned by RKO Pictures that had gone bust, and he literally saved it from the trash. It was going to be destroyed.
Literally from the trash. Yes.
Literally from the trash.
Yeah.
And I think it really typifies how, like older studios felt about their props. They were like byproducts of like filmmaking.
Yeah. The movie's done. Throw it out.
Yeah. We use them in the scene. It's done. Let's dispose of it. Let's put it in storage. We'll think about it later.
Yeah.
But a big turning point came in the 70s when, these old studios were strapped for cash and they began like liquidating their assets, basically clearing out their warehouse. And MGM famously held this massive 18-day sale of the props in 1970. It generated reportedly $8 million, which is going to be like tens of millions today. So
Wow.
all that stuff is basically supply for the film collectibles market today. And you had actor Debbie Reynolds. She bought up a ton of stuff at the auction.
Hmm.
Her collection was in the thousands. And when she sold it in 2011, it fetched again millions. And today you have this acknowledgement that by studios that these props are not just valuable, but it's a way to like engage with the fan base. So you have Jim Henson, but you also have HBO, who
Yeah.
actually saved 900 props from the series Game of Thrones, and they sold it for $21 million, all of it,
I
last year.
I can hear, as people are listening to this, I can hear everyone sighing at the amounts of millions that are sort of being bandied about here. But Citizen Kane, that sled is not even the most expensive piece of movie
Nope.
memorabilia to have sold. Can you talk about the one that was sold and how expensive it was? Because it did drive me a little bit bananas also.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So yeah, last year we saw the most expensive film collectible being sold at auction. Judy Garland's ruby slippers from Wizard of Oz,
Yes.
$32 million, Elamin. So that's massive.
Yeah.
And so I mean, only 4 or 5 known pairs of these ruby slippers are known to exist. There's one in the Smithsonian, one in the Academy Museum, and this record-breaking one was used in like close-ups, so it's very intricate, very detailed.
Mm-hmm.
It was in a collection of this man called Michael Shaw, and he acquired them a little bit before MGM did their big liquidation. He bought them for like $2,000 from
Mm-hmm.
a costumer, and he held on to the shoes for decades. He sent them out on tour. They went to museums. And in 2005, when they were in the Judy Garland Museum, it was stolen,
Mm.
and they went missing for 13 years. The FBI was on the case, and they cracked it in 2018.
Wow.
They were returned to Michael Shaw, and Michael Shaw just put them up for auction. So
Okay.
there is, yeah,
But
go
the thing
ahead.
you're talking about there is that, like, sometimes they end up in museums and people can actually like see them and participate
Sure.
in an important piece of pop culture. But that's
Yeah,
not actually often the thing that happens. Like, quite often they
no.
end up, these are significant pieces of cultural legacy for sure, but then they end up
Mhm.
disappearing into private hands. And when they end up in a private collection, what's the thing that we lose? What do we lose then?
I think obviously, it does hide away some part of our shared cultural memory.
Yeah.
But I will say that, these collectors don't see themselves as, like hiding this stuff away or hoarding it. Many of them do, loan works to museum, like Michael Shaw did loan his slippers to a bunch of museums.
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro, the Mexican director, he's got a huge collection of like horror memorabilia, which he has, stage exhibitions around it.
Yeah.
So, they kind of see themselves as like caretakers, like custodians of these objects.
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro, he said, collecting is not owning, collecting is protecting. And there's a
Hmm.
responsibility there for, to preserve and like steward these props, even if they have to let them go. Debbie Reynolds said the same as well. And like, I kind of appreciate that in a way.
Yeah.
Like, these artifacts are really being cared for by people who love them.
Love them to the tune of $32 million. I mean, that
Yeah.
is, I don't know if I love anything to the amount of that much. Before I let you go, can I just ask you, if you had the money, I'm going to give you the money right now. I'm going to give you, hey, Min Chen, you have $25 million. What's a pop culture artifact that you'd want to actually own?
You're giving me this money a bit too late, because with the money, I would have totally bid on the Labyrinth items at the Jim Henson auction. Like,
You would have.
I would have, yeah.
Okay.
There was a pocket watch from Labyrinth, which wasn't in the film, but
Yeah.
it was in Jim Henson's collection. It sold for $19,000. I think I can afford that with the money you're gonna give me.
Yeah.
And also, something for Star Wars would be nice.
I'm so sorry I'm offering you this money far too late. I apologize. That's my
It's
bad.
fine. It's fine.
Well, Min Chen, I thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate
Of
your
course.
time. This has been wonderful. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Min Chen is a culture editor at Artnet News. They were speaking about how pop culture memorabilia is becoming big business for collectors. That is it for the show today. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. Hey, I hope you have a great day. If you're around tomorrow, we're going to do this again. So we would love to see you there.